Today, we're diving into a real paradox. You've got this incredible wave of young, super innovative talent in Nepal, but the global venture capital that's just pouring into neighboring countries, well, in Nepal, it's barely a trickle. We're going to break down exactly why, the key legal hurdles that are keeping foreign investors on the sidelines.
And this really gets to the heart of the matter. It's not about pulling out profits every year. No. The real deal breaker, the thing that stops investors in their tracks, is getting their money back plus their gains after they sell. It's simple, really. If you can't see a clear way out, you're not going to bother coming in.
So, here's the puzzle we're looking at. On one hand, you have this amazing pool of young, tech-savvy talent building some really incredible things. But on the other hand, the big global VC funds, they're mostly staying away. It just doesn't add up. So, what gives?
Look, for any serious investor, the exit strategy is everything. It has to be clear, it has to be predictable, and it has to be efficient. Think of it this way. You'd never start a race if you didn't know where the finish line was, right? It's the most basic rule of the game for investing. Okay, so this analysis boils it down to three major legal roadblocks. We're going to walk through each one. First, the capital trap, then the talent war, and finally, what's being called the Great Wall. All right, hurdle number one, the capital trap. Now, a lot of people think the problem is getting annual profits out, but that's not the main issue. The real crisis happens when an investor has a successful exit. They sell their shares, and they want to bring their original investment and all their profits back home. And this just lays it all out. It's not a process, it's a gauntlet. You're looking at a mountain of paperwork for the central bank with absolutely no set timelines for approval. So what should be a straightforward legal right turns into a maybe, a privilege that's completely up to their discretion. And the delays? We're talking months, sometimes even years. So what's the root cause of this mess? Well, the regulations are basically stuck in the 1980s. They were designed for big physical factories, not for fast-moving tech startups. The system looks at an investor taking their money out and sees capital flight, something suspicious. It doesn't see what it actually is, the sign of a successful investment. Okay, let's move on to the second hurdle, the talent war. And it really is a war. Globally, startups are fighting for the best engineers, the best designers, and their number one weapon in that fight is equity. But in Nepal, the rules around giving employees equity are so murky that it puts local startups at a massive disadvantage. We're talking about ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans. This is how startups compete with big corporations. They can't offer huge salaries, so they offer a piece of the company, turning employees into partners. But here's the kicker. Nepal's Companies Act doesn't even mention stock options. So these plans, they're basically operating in a legal gray zone. And that legal vacuum? It creates total paralysis. Because without clear guidance from the tax authorities, nobody, not the company, not the employee, has any idea when the tax man comes knocking. And this is where it gets really tricky. Depending on when you get taxed, the outcome is completely different. Just imagine this. You're an employee, you exercise your stock options, and suddenly you're hit with a massive tax bill. But you haven't sold the stock yet, you have no cash. You're being taxed on wealth that only exists on paper. It's a huge disincentive. All right, our third and final barrier. It's called the Great Wall. And honestly, this one might be the most damaging of all. And it all boils down to just one single rule in Nepal's FDI policy. Here it is. The policy says that any foreign investment has to be at least 20 million Nepali rupees. That's roughly 150,000 US dollars. Now, that might not sound like a lot for a huge fund, but for early-stage startups, it's a death sentence. It basically outlaws foreign investment in the most crucial stages, the angel and seed rounds, where startups get their first real cash to grow. And when you put it side by side with the neighbors, the problem becomes crystal clear. You look at India, you look at Bangladesh, they have no minimum for tech startups. They're rolling out the red carpet for early-stage investors. Meanwhile, Nepal's policy is basically a giant keep-out sign for the entire global angel investor community. You know, the funny thing is, a policy like this doesn't actually stop investment. It just reroutes it. Smart, ambitious founders find a workaround, the so-called Singapore flip. They set up a parent company overseas just to get around the rules. And what's the result? Nepal loses everything, the IP, the ownership, and all the future taxes from its best and brightest companies. So when you put it all together, the analysis leaves Nepal's policymakers at a crossroads. There's a critical choice to be made here, and it leads to two completely different futures. Path one is the scenario of stagnation.
The Singapore flip just becomes the normal way of doing business. Nepal becomes a great place to hire talent, but all the real value, the ownership, is captured somewhere else. Then there's path 2, surgical reform. This is where smart, targeted changes are made to the law, encouraging companies to stay and build at home, creating a truly strong domestic tech economy.
But at the end of the day, this isn't just about tweaking a few laws. It requires a whole new way of thinking, a philosophical shift, really, moving away from this old school mindset of capital control and gatekeeping and moving towards one of capital facilitation. Because let's be honest, in today's economy, money and talent are fluid. They'll go wherever they're treated best. And so this whole analysis leaves Nepal with one big fundamental question about its future. Does it want to be a source of talent for other countries' companies? Or does it want to be a hub where it owns the great enterprises of the future?